Hello and welcome to the Paletteful Packs YouTube channel. My name is Alice and today I have the March 2023 Paletteful Premiere Pack here in front of me. So let's go ahead, open it up and see what's inside. Oh, this is so cute. I love this. So the first thing we're seeing in here is this cute little Paletteful Pack sticker. It's a little coffee cup filled with art supplies. So I love that so much. I can't wait to put that in my sketchbook. The next thing I see in here is this Daler-Rowney FW acrylic ink in black. FW acrylic ink is acrylic pigment-based water-resistant ink, and it has a really high degree of light fastness, and you can mix these with pretty much any acrylic medium. I use these regularly in my own art, and they're really, really fantastic to use. They provide a really nice waterproof line when they're done, and you can also use them as like washes, you can use them like watercolor, or you can use them with like a pen. You can use them for a line art. They're really, really versatile. We're also going to have a cute little cup to put our ink in by Art Alternatives. And we also have this empty marker that we can put the ink in. So this is by Montana and it's an acrylic empty marker. You can fill it with fluid acrylics, other acrylic inks, but we're going to fill it with that FW acrylic ink. And it has an optimum flow control pump valve system. So that's cool because I feel like my paint always comes out too fast, so hopefully that will solve that problem. And it's really nice and thick, so ergonomic, easy to hold in the hand. We have a Art Alternatives permanent marker in gray. These are alcohol-based markers with high light fastness, and they will be water resistant and permanent. Ha! It's the Pilot Varsity. I love these. So these are fountain pens. They have them in a bunch of different colors, but we have black and they're really easy to write with. They're really smooth. These guys will like start up even after you haven't used them for months. And they are water-based, so you can smudge out the lines, so you can like sketch with it and then smudge the lines out to create like a shading effect. So I'm really excited. I love these. So we have another permanent marker. This one is by Pilot. It's an ultra fine point and it is black. Oh, that's a really fine point. So this is a permanent marker and it should mark permanently on most surfaces like glass, metal, wood, cardboard, and plastic. Ooh, then we have a speedball sketching kit. Oh, this is so exciting. Look at this. I love that. We've got a bunch of different nibs, 6 different nibs, 2 different holders, so it's an 8-piece set. And Speedball is kind of like the name when it comes to dip pens and things like that. So this will be perfect for using with that ink as well. I'm also seeing 2 brushes in here. These are both by Robert Simmons. This one is a size 6 in their White Sable line, and this one is a size 2 Filbert in their Sapphire line. And the last thing I see in here is the surface. This is Strathmore Bristol board. There are 20 A4 sheets. They are 100 pounds, so they should take all of the different supplies that we have, and this should be great paper to work on for all of the different pen and ink style things that we have this month. Okay, so this is everything that you're going to get in the March 2023 Paletteful Packs. We have our cute little sticker, our Speedball dip pen set. We have the Montana empty acrylic marker, and along with that, the FW acrylic ink. We have 2 Robert Simmons paintbrushes. We have the Pilot fountain pen, and then we have the 2 permanent markers, the little paint cup, and then the Bristol board. So I'm really excited. I can't wait to start drawing, so let's jump right into it. So I started with the sketch on the Bristol board. I taped down the Bristol board to my drawing board and then used a 2H pencil to sketch out my drawing. I like to use a 2H pencil because they're light enough that you can draw over them and erase them really easily, and they don't like make too deep of a mark on the paper, so they're great for if you're going to be watercoloring or drawing line art over the top, anything like that. I really do recommend using a lightweight pencil like a H or a 2H. So that's what I'm using to establish the sketch here. I'm just drawing a face. I've been really into working on my facial anatomy and my personal style recently, so I wanted to go ahead and work with that and kind of put a moon in the middle of her forehead as if she's some sort of lunar goddess. And that was kind of the idea that I was working with for this piece. And once I have the sketch finished, I'm planning on going in with that FW black acrylic ink. That acrylic ink is really, really waterproof, so it's really going to stay. I can layer whatever I want on top of it. So I'm not going to have to worry about laying in washes, using the permanent markers, or using any of the other supplies that we got in the box. As you can see, I'm using the Speedball dip pen for this. I picked a nib based on my own personal preference. You can kind of play around with them to figure out which ones you like best, but I kind of knew which one I like best because I used to use dip pens a lot in college. So it's been a really long time since I've used one, and it definitely took a little bit of practice to get back used to it. But you can pour your ink in the cup or you can dip directly into the bottle. It depends on you. But if you pour it into a cup, you're a little less likely to flood your nib. So you want to dip your nib in about I dip it in about 3/4 of the way, but you don't want the ink to go all the way up to the top because it'll clog up your nib and it'll be more likely to drop blotches everywhere, and also you'll stain your fingers like crazy. You'll probably get ink on your fingers regardless with this, but that will make it a lot worse. And then this paper is really, really smooth, so it's really well suited to using a dip pen. There's nothing for it to catch on, because a lot of times when it can catch on the texture of the paper, it'll kind of spray little bits of ink everywhere or make your line not very smooth. But because this paper is so smooth, because it is Bristol board, it works perfectly for these dip pens. When I do dip the pen in, I do kind of wipe it off a little bit at the edge because you don't want any drips. And where you start your line is generally going to be the thickest part. So right after you've dipped your pen in, the line that you start will be the thickest. So just keep that in mind. If you're working on a really small detailed area, you might want to draw a little bit of a thicker line where the thicker lines are before you move to the thinner lines. Once I had all that done, I used the gray permanent marker to outline the moon on her head, and then I also used it to add some hatching shading to the rest of her face. I thought this would look nice because the shading and the hatching will come through the wash that I'm going to put on it, but the marker, because it's permanent, isn't going to smear, and because it's gray, it's not going to overwhelm the rest of the face like it would if it was black. If it was black, it might get too lost in the line art and it might look too heavy, and with gray I don't have to worry about that as much. So I felt that the gray was really useful for adding in this kind of hatching and shading that I'm doing. It also really helps just kind of round out the face and make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. Then I'm going in and darkening certain areas of the hatching using the Pilot fountain pen. And I'm using this because I know that this is going to smudge out. And while the other hatching won't smudge out, this will smudge out a little bit and just kind of soften those hatching lines and create a nice wash that I can then go over the top of. And then finally, I'm using that black permanent marker to go in and add the designs on her collar because I wanted those designs to stay and also be dark. So that's why I went with the black. Also shading in her ears because I forgot. And then I'm going in with that Robert Simmons brush and adding some water, and you can see how easily that Pilot fountain pen blends out. This is just adding water. I'm not adding any ink yet, but I'm using that to blend out the areas that I added in that darker fountain pen and start establishing the overall shading of her face. This is still kind of the very early shading. I want to give her face more depth and add some darkness so that that moon pops. So I'm going to really add a shadow kind of under her hair, but that's what I'm going to do with this ink. And I put a tiny little drop of ink in the cup and then a lot of water. You need a lot more water than you might think to water down this because it is so pigmented. So, have a little test sheet and you can test your shades on there to see how dark it is. And I'm just using this to build up the face in the same way that I would watercolor, starting with the lightest layer and moving into mid-tones and then into the darkest layer. And as I'm doing that, I'm just adding a little bit more paint to the cup as I go, and just controlling that level of darkness. I'm also filling in the earrings, just giving them a little bit of a shine and cleaning up the edges of my moon. I forgot to erase my pencil line, so I went ahead and did that. You can see there's a little smudge that happened in the top right corner, but I'm not worried about that because I'm just going to cover it up later. I use a pretty dark concentration of ink, mostly just ink with a little bit of water to establish where her hair is going to be because I do want the hair to be really dark, but I don't want it to be fully black because I am going to go around with a black outline later and I want that to be darker than the hair. So I'm going for a very dark gray, almost black instead of using a pure black for this. But it's still dark enough to provide the contrast that I'm looking for because when you're working with monochromatic monochromatic color schemes, whether you're working with just black and white or, all blue or all red, whatever. It's important to provide contrast in value because there's no contrast in color. So it's the best way that you can add contrast and keep your painting from kind of blending into one another. For the rest of the top of her outfit, I went to do something a little different because I felt I didn't want to keep it white, but I wanted it to have a little bit more interest than the rest of it. So I filled the whole thing with water and then dropped in little dots of the black paint and then just slightly smeared it out. So it created this kind of mottled texture for the top. And I just left it at that and let it dry. Didn't bother to add any shading to it. Now I'm going to go in with the acrylic marker. So I disassemble the acrylic marker, which is pretty easy. You just untwist the top and then you kind of pop out this top part. And then you're going to go ahead and drip in that paint. And this can take a little bit of time if you're going to fill the whole thing up. I don't remember. At some point I was counting and then I lost count. But once you're done, you just reassemble it and then push it a couple times to get the ink flowing. And then you have a acrylic marker, and it's really cool. And you could put really any color acrylic ink in this if you didn't want to put black. So there's a lot of cool applications for it. I'm going around the whole figure with that thick black marker, and then I'm making a second line so that I can create this white border around her. I'm also going over the lines around the top and just around the edge of her face just to make that stand out a little bit more from the hair as well. Then I'm going to take the pure black ink and just drip it on the background of the paper and use the brush to smear and blend that out so that the whole background is super, super black. The last thing I have to do are her eyes, so I use a little bit of the darker color to fill in the eyes, and then I just smudge it out to add in a little bit of shading to the eyeballs, because eyeballs are 3D, so you do need to add a little bit of shading to them. And once I was done, I signed it with the fountain pen, took off my tape, and that was my piece. I'm actually really happy with how this came out, and it was nice to see my improvement in faces compared to some previous work I've done, so I was really happy with it. I hope this video was inspiring and helpful to you and gave you some ideas as to ways that you can use your products from this month's box. If you'd like to get your own Paletteful pack, then check the link in the description box below. And as always, have a great day. Bye!